One of the greatest weeks of the year, every year, when the Athletics' Bruce Feldman puts out his annual Freaks list. It is Freaks Week. Bruce, you're the greatest freak of them all because I know how much work it takes to put together this list that you do every single year. There's some people who don't do this much work in a year, and you do it for this one story. So thank you for that. But was this one of the more fun ones to do? You're leading off with a true freshman. You got a bunch of guys that are, we're going to learn about them in the draft process, but you've also got some guys that we know very, very well on this list.
Yeah, I feel like they're all kind of unique when, depending on the year and everything. But what was different with this, as you said, Nyckoles Harbor, true freshman, who is a big time track credentials guy. That was a little bit of a curveball for me. And then, there was a couple of supersized offensive linemen that I was like, oof, and I had Evan Neal on here, number one, a couple of years back, but I just think they're, these are younger linemen too. And so I know we'll get into them, but it's just like, it's a little different this time, I think. I never had as many players I had from one school, but the Penn State Hall of Freaks was, kind of a wow thing. And it's like, I can't not have Abdul Carter because I know what he's like. And I can't, it's like, so you kind of have to find room for it. And then I ended up having 101 this year because I had a coach reach out to me from a Power 5 school who made a strong case for one of his players. I was on the phone with their strength coach at like 10:30 at night, that guy's time.
That's great.
And as you know, Andy, on the publishing schedule for The Athletic, I'm on the West Coast, you're not, but I feel like those stories go up at like 2:00 in the morning, my time.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking like, how am I going to, fortunately our editor, she was like, no, she was like, but who do you want to bump? And I was like, and I'm looking at it and I got Neck Mitchell, a nose guard from Southeast Louisiana sitting at
Neck Mitchell. Wait, he's from Louisiana and his name is Neck.
I don't. Yeah, I was like, I'm not bumping Neck, and the world needs Neck Mitchell on this list. And she was like, let's just keep 101. I was like, great, let's do 101 this year.
That is amazing. Well, I like the Penn State thing's interesting to me because this is what I've been saying about Penn State all off season, because I keep saying we keep making this an Ohio State, Michigan thing, but don't be shocked if Penn State is in the hunt for the Big Ten this year because of exactly what you said. And it's not just the freaks aspect of it, but the fact that some of these freaks are major NFL prospects. So you got Chop Robinson, Jordan Vandenberg, Olu Fashanu, Nick Singleton, Zane Durant, and Abdul Carter from Penn State. Olu might be the first offensive lineman drafted next year. Abdul Carter, when he is draft eligible, is going to be very sought after. That's a lot of talent there.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous haul they have there. I mean, Nick Singleton, the guy people compare him to is Adrian Peterson. I mean, that is a heavy duty guy to be compared to in terms of just super freak athlete. You mentioned Olu. Olu is 6'6", 320. The thing I loved, when he told me was like, both his parents, they're not taller than 5'8", and he got to be 6'6". There was really, and again, 3-star guy who is just, last year was 19. People were talking about who's the best O-line prospect in the country. You have a bunch of other guys in there, Chop Robinson, Abdul Carter. There were probably 3 other guys, Keandre Lambert Smith, super fast receiver. You had another Trey Beeman, another D lineman. You had a couple other guys in there who probably, if they played at a different school, I've been like, yeah, I'm going to put those guys on there, but I can't have 9 guys from Penn State. But it's just ridiculous how much talent they have and explosive athletes. And I know people will look at this, and I actually mentioned this on Twitter when I put out the story. It was like, people are going to scoff, oh, these numbers can't be real or whatever. It's like, this school in particular, Penn State, we've seen it time and time again, whether it's Saquon Barkley, Micah Parsons, Owe, Gesicki, these guys put up ridiculous times when we had them on the freaks list, and then they go to the combine or the pro day,
yeah,
and they match them or exceed them. So that place has got a ton of them.
Well, and I think your freaks list kind of predicted the rise of Michigan too, because over the years you've had quite a few Michigan players on this list. Ben Herbert, the strength coach there, is great at getting you video
Arkansas,
of
yeah, and he's also, yes, he is great at getting the video. You want proof? Here's your proof.
Yeah, and that I love watching those. They've got that big set of stairs that they do the leaps up, but the one you had Kris Jenkins on the list this year, defensive tackle from Michigan, and he's doing a Turkish getup in one of the videos you put out with 170-pound dumbbell in his hand. That's crazy.
It is insane. It is just insane. Like when I saw Harbaugh, last time I saw you, Andy, was we were both in Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days, and I saw Harbaugh, and he gave me this bold quote that he thinks they're going to break Georgia's record for the most players drafted in a single draft. He said he thinks they're going to be 20, and he said Kris Jenkins, I think, is going to watch him go as a top 10 pick. And our old friend Dane Brugler, who's our draft analyst at The Athletic, he had. I think a lot of guys were like, yeah, he could be a top 100 pick or whatever. But I don't think anybody's realized just what this kid's evolution is now. I mean, he was in the 250s. And also, by the way, another 3-star guy who's really blossomed there. His great genetics. Obviously, his dad was also Kris Jenkins, who was a Pro Bowler in the NFL. But the numbers he puts up, the stuff he does, now he's 307 pounds. And 34-inch vertical jump and shuttle times are crazy, or like what you'd expect from honestly, from a running back. I mean, and he's been really good against the run, but they think he's really taken his game to the next level from the coaches I talked to this past month as a pass rusher.
Yeah, it is. And Mozzie Smith was one of those last year, where it didn't seem like he was that big of a draft prospect going into the season, and coming out, obviously he was, and they've just been great at that.
Yeah, he goes in the first round. I mean, they sent me all this stuff, the combo twist, 800 pounds and just incredible strength. And look, you're seeing plenty of video now at a training camp of that strength, of what he's, the Cowboys need him to be a guy to clog up the middle and not get rooted out of there. And with that kind of strength, he definitely has it. Now, he was 337. Kris Jenkins isn't that big, but some of the other guys, a little like Penn State, there was 3 guys on there. Zach Zinner, who's been a really good offensive lineman, 6'6 plus, 325, and he vertical jumps 33 inches, and his shuttle times are really good. Mike Sainer, still a great nickel guy there. Jumps over 40 inches, and his shuttle times are under 4 seconds. So. Wow. Even Blake Corum, another one, super strong, 30 reps for a running back at 2 1/4, and also his shuttle times. We know he's coming off the knee injury. Is a pretty spectacular athlete. So they're deep in it as well. In Ann Arbor right now.
So even their transfers at Michigan are making the freaks list. You got Julius Welshoff, who has transferred to Charlotte for our favorite guest so far on the show, Biff Poggi, and this guy's a mogul skier who could do flips.
Andy, I had him on, probably 4 years ago, and he was a kind of a regular on the freaks list the last few years. I mean, he was a guy who was doing backflips, walked on his hands for like 50 yards. He's from Germany. Just, some insane video we used to have of the stuff that he could do. And he's still a guy at 6'6" now, 265, who's going to, vertical jump in the mid 30s and broad jump 10.6. We'll see what he does with Biff, because I think he's going to be showcased a lot more as an edge rusher right now. And I think, they obviously have a Yabi Oki, or Yabi Anoma, as he was known before, when he was a 5-star, and he was bounced around from Alabama and ended up at Michigan.
Played for Biff in high school.
Played for Biff in high school. That's right. And so I think it's going to be fun to watch that Charlotte program. And I know it'll be very entertaining with Biff to see how it comes together in the AAC.
Oh, it's going to be tremendous. But I think the thing that surprised me the most when I opened the freaks list this year, because usually you do lean toward experience, but this year you led off number 1 with a true freshman. And it's a guy that we've talked about a bunch on this show, because Spencer Rattler was on talking about him. Shane Beamer was on talking about him. Nicholas Harbor, South Carolina receiver, 6'5". Shane Beamer told us he weighed 243 the other day, and he's run a 10-200. His 200 time is blazing. What can this guy be?
I mean, he could be a great edge rusher. Could he grow into he's going to be a matchup nightmare. That's what he's going to be, just because of that size. And so I talked to Shane as well, probably a couple of days before this, to get his updated numbers. Do you have any GPS times on him, or what have they done? Because we know he's fast. As you said, 10-200 is crazy fast. And to put it into context, so Shane has a tight ends coach named Jody Wright, who was at Alabama for a while. And he was there when they had both Julio Jones and, among others, and Derrick Henry. And we talked about that kind of comparison. Obviously, those guys are really big, freaky dudes. This guy's bigger. He's much bigger than Julio Jones. And both of those guys were legit track guys in high school, at least really competitive. And he's bigger, and he ran a full second faster in the 100. A full second, as you know, in track is
It's
a
an
lot.
eternity. Yeah.
So for that context, I was like, I may have to have a true freshman number one.
Yeah. I mean, I might run a full second less than Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry's running a full second less than this guy. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure we know a sports writer who's going to run a full second less than Derrick Henry in the 100, but maybe in the 40. But
yeah, probably not. Yeah, I could definitely do a 12-second 40. There's no question about that. Oh wait, we're talking about a 5.5-second 40. Maybe we'll see. We will have our sports writer combine before long, Bruce, and we'll, now that gambling is legal.
I'm not of the age of I want to be doing this. There was a time when I would have embraced it. Now I probably wouldn't be wise.
You will demolish everyone in pull-ups. I know pull-ups is not an NFL combine drill, but you'll just destroy everyone.
And that thing is not something like I haven't done them in a while. So when I was back at Florida, Georgia, I know you told you that story. That was a big thing for me, but those days are long gone.
The story is basically Bruce and somebody else are walking into the Florida Georgia game in Jacksonville. And what was it? The Army or the Marines, the local recruiter had a pull-up station, and they were letting drunk people do pull-ups basically. And Bruce, how many did you knock out?
I think I was at like 33. And I just remember I was there. I wasn't writing off the game, but our college basketball writer at the ESPN magazine, John Gustafson, and I, he'd never been. He was like, I always wanted to go to Florida, Georgia. I was like, okay. So we did a lot of sightseeing, walking around the tailgates and everything. And they had a Marine Corps station set up. And I think I won maybe a beer koozie or something for it. I just remember I walked into the press box, and I had such a pump, I couldn't, my arms were still kind of pulsating. I was
Your
sweating.
sleeves are just
I was
straining.
I had this golf shirt that looked like a tank top on by that point. I was sweaty, and sadly, that was that's the closest I can get to, Andy, to your national championship ring. I got a beer koozie from the Marine.
33 pull-ups is better than that. Is better than anything I did that season. So that is amazing. I do want to talk to you about a guy that I read about on your list and then did a Google video search on him. And it was some of the most fun I've had this offseason. And that's Kingsley Suamataia. Help me with the last name.
I sometimes when you hear somebody pronounce their name, it's almost like you can't pronounce it that way. But I think that's how his last name is pronounced.
So he is an offensive tackle at BYU. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore this season. He started his career at Oregon in 2021. He's from the Salt Lake City area, tight with the Sewell family. I don't know if
I think he's cousins with them.
Yeah, who's your cousin? Okay, yeah, and
I reference where I hear in his name. He did I think it was Kalani Sitake's coach's show. He was a guest on with Kalani and the host, and he said that and I've seen a lot of pictures with him and the Sewells. I think he said that that's his cousin, and certainly the bloodlines are strong for special athletes.
His video is hilarious because there are just so many clips of this guy launching people. He is a finisher of blocks. He will block someone across the sideline and then just add that extra little shove to make them fly into the bench. It is incredible to watch this guy. And he does not like offensive linemen used to be fat. This guy is jacked.
Yeah, he also looks when you look at him in the face, he also still looks like he's pretty young, which he
Yeah.
is obviously, but you could sit there and go because I remember doing sideline for a lot of Panay Sewell's games, and Panay was just a giant. He's just this mountain of a man. And I'm not saying Kingsley's not, but like he looks like he could still get a lot bigger,
Yeah.
if and probably will. But when I knew he was probably going to be on here, and then Aaron Roderick, the offensive coordinator at BYU, sent me a text, and he was like, "He's the most violent, most athletic offensive lineman I've ever been around." And they just had a guy in Blake Freeland who was a legit freak offensive lineman at BYU. Now he was nowhere near as hefty and big. He was tall at 6'8", and he was 302, and he vertical jumped 37 inches at the combine. He lit up the combine. He ran in the high 4.9s. To be more athletic than him, I was like, wow, this guy's 23 pounds bigger. And then he said, well, you need to talk to our sports science guy. And I did. And he said, he's faster than our linebackers. And I was like, wow. And then I was like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, we had him at 21.5 on the GPS, which is flying, 21.5. And he said, no, he wasn't 325. He was 318. 318 is still huge.
21.5 is good running back speed.
Right. That's what I wrote in the freaks list. 21.5, if you're 218 pounds, is good. 25.15, if you're 318, means I probably maybe could have made the case that he should be number one and not Nyckoles Harbor. I mean, to be 6'6", 325. Now, I don't know if he would still do 21.5, but this guy was like, yeah, I think he's a 4'8" guy in the 40. And we'll see what, he didn't give up a sack last year in every pass attempt that BYU had. They moved him to left tackle now. I mean, as you said, he's still a young player.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if he is not going to be a high first round pick when he eventually leaves there.
Right. And he is draft eligible this year because remember that first year at Oregon. So that's one, if you're a draftnik, keep an eye on him, watch some BYU games because he very well could be in the mix. He's not as young as say Olu was last year. Olu Fashanu was 19 for most of last season. And that's one of the reasons, according to him and to James Franklin, he didn't go out. He felt like he wanted to more physically mature before he went to the NFL. But Kingsley looks like he's pretty physically mature already. So,
yeah, he is. I mean, he is special. I mean, like Olu was super mature and grounded when you talk to him and everything. But there's a group of offensive linemen that are here, in the first 25, and they're big tackles. Two of them, Mario Cristobal actually recruited. One obviously was Kingsley. The other one is Francis Mauigoa. I think that's how he pronounces his last name.
And I'm glad you brought him up because he was the next one I want to talk about. This is another true freshman. This was a top 10 recruit from last year. Probably going to play right away for Miami. So he's going to be playing, game 2, he's going to be playing those monsters from Texas A&M. And please, I almost crashed my car. I know I shouldn't be reading your stories while the car is moving, but it was the most Mario Cristobal quote of all time.
Yes. Greatest muscle density in Miami history. And you said it, and I agree. That's like, I thought the exact same thing. It's a freak thing about a freak, there's always ways, because we're so used to quantifying these things with vertical jumps and 40s and bench press reps and whatnot. And then there's this, and it's not like the only time I've ever heard something along these lines, but it's something now. And just the idea, 6'6", 341, and I'm gonna have to read this part to you, only 20.9% body fat, which, as you know, for an offensive lineman is pretty lean. So he has 270 pounds of pure lean muscle mass, which is, again, he is young. He is a true freshman. It's not like he's had 3 years in a college weight program. He didn't. So, and then the other parts of this, 1.72 10-yard split. The only 300-pound lineman at the combine who ran faster than that was the aforementioned Blake Freeland from BYU. And Blake Freeland is 39 pounds less than this young kid.
Well, and so I don't know if you saw the pictures we were rolling while you were talking. There's a picture of him with Joe Salavea, their defensive line coach. And if you've never seen Joe Salavea, he looks like he could play defensive
Right
line in the
now.
NFL today.
Yeah, right now.
He looks very small compared to young Francis.
I know, it's crazy. It is crazy how when you see somebody like that make somebody who, I go back to this is it's one of my favorite videos, and it's a person it's two people I really like, but there's that video, it's like of a college game day, little like demo field. And our
Mm,
friend Cole Kubelik, who by all accounts, I mean, he was a starting center in the SEC,
yeah.
is now not a small man.
No.
And Marcus Spears just tosses him like he's a crouton. And I, I was just like, I don't know if I'm sure you've seen that video where it's
Oh
like,
yeah. But Spears would have made, if the freaks list had existed
oh
when
yeah, I
Spears
mean,
was playing,
yeah,
320-pound defensive end who probably legit could have played college basketball.
yeah, yeah. But it was just like, I mean, again, to see a huge man throw another big man
Yeah.
around like ragdoll him. Like, I mean, he basically like Marcus Spears made Cole Kubelik look like he was like throwing around Chris Vanini. It was just like, and so
Our
just
our former coworker, or my former coworker at the Athletic, Kris is probably 170 soaking wet. Yes. So
170. No, Kris is probably
I was trying to give
147
trying to
soaking
give
wet.
him a little more.
Anyway, um, but yeah, that's crazy how to see that because like you said, this is one of the biggest coaches in college football in terms of was a big time nose guard, still a huge hulking guy, and just to see that for scale is something.
It is unbelievable. And so I love this stuff. And now it makes me more excited to see Miami play, because this was kind of Mario Cristobal's mandate, is get them better on both lines of scrimmage. And this sounds like the kind of person who can. Now I realize we're putting a lot on a true
Oh, yeah,
freshman,
yeah. Well,
but
the
he
other offensive tackle, the other 5-star guy, Samson Okolona, is actually
right,
not that far behind him in terms
right.
of he's not quite as massive, but he's close, and he moves not quite as well, but pretty close.
Yep. Well, let's stay on the line of scrimmage. There's a guy who, if you only watched 5 plays of last, or missed the first 5 plays of last season, you didn't see him. Maason Smith got hurt play 5 of the Florida State game. This is LSU's star defensive tackle. He's back this year, and some of his numbers were just wild.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, as you said, like he had a really good freshman year. He kind of flashed and was very disruptive. When I talked to Jack Marucci, who's the guru at LSU and probably knows more about sports performance and how athletes are wired than anybody working in it, I said, because he was at Florida State when they were winning championships, then he been at LSU for a long time. I was like, is there anybody he reminds you of? Because look, there's been the Glenn Dorseys and a bunch of other
Yeah.
guys, but they weren't like this, right?
Not as athletic, no.
But also not as big in terms of
Yeah.
just not as like rangy. And that's what he really is. And so he was like, no, I don't think in terms of being a guy who could be outside, in terms of being a guy who can definitely be inside. But the numbers at 6'6", 315, over 19 miles per hour on the GPS, and just the length and everything else, he's 15 pounds bigger than he was last year. I would expect, and this is a potentially dominant D line because they have 2 other guys who could have been on the freaks list as well in that group.
Yeah, and that's where with LSU, they may need to make up for which is weird to say about LSU. They're not as deep in the secondary as they usually are, so they may have to make up for that up front and get after quarterbacks. But this dude is gonna get after some quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's going to be a problem. You obviously have Harold Perkins, who's super, warp speed. You get Omar Spates there. Going to be a fun defense. Matt, I think Matt House is a really good defensive coordinator, and he's got a lot of pieces to work with, especially in the front. I don't feel like they have like those cats that like when Corey Raymond, who's now in your backyard at UF, he had a bunch of dudes, and I don't know if they have that caliber of guys on the back end, but they're going to be a problem for quarterbacks just getting it off.
So speaking of backyards, in your backyard, you have a transplant from the Midwest. Carson Steele, stole our hearts as a Maction tailback at Ball State. He's the guy who's got the pet alligator named Crocky J. He's just blonde hair. Like, he's now at UCLA, and it feels like that they want him to kind of fill that Zach Charbonnet role.
They do. And look, they have big backs. He's not the biggest back in the running back room. They have two other guys who are actually bigger, but he is super strong, a 450-pound bench guy, squats almost 700 pounds, but he's explosive, almost, vertical jumps, 35 inches, hits 21 on the GPS. And there's some great stories about him when he first transferred there. He was blowing people away in the weight room with what he could do and just how physically strong, especially his lower body is. I think Chip Kelly loves this guy, and he was I think he was like 95th on the freaks list last year. He's in the top 25 now, and he's a good fit for what they want to do. They want to be physical. He's a hammer, and I think I think don't let the long, like the beach look of his headshot fool you. This is a really, really, it's kind of like a warlord in terms of.
I mean, he's from the Indianapolis suburbs. There's nothing beach about this guy. Yeah. So it is fun though. I can't wait to see him in that offense, because it does seem like Chip kind of, after a little trial and error, found what he wanted their identity to be. And it is a very physical smash mouth type offense. And he fits the bill perfectly. But if we're going to name someone on the freaks list, I mean, we're going to have to go to Thor. You had a guy named Nick, but you got a guy named Thor, and he goes to Harvard. Thor Griffith.
Yeah, the stories about him, Andy, in terms of he grew up as a terrific hockey player, then he was a wrestler, and he's from New Hampshire, and he is incredibly strong. Right. And there's video of him benching 225, 45 times. Oh. He's worked really, really hard to increase his agility and his speed. And he got down from last year. I think we had him at a 5'1" and 5'13", 5'14", 40. It's 4.95 now. His shuttle times are really quick. And everybody I talked to, whether it was coaches who played him or coaches who work with him, they're like, his work ethic is like second to none. So when I talked to Thor, he was like, he's basically put himself on a diet of 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day. You can put that into context, but it is, he's unblockable in the Ivy Leagues. And I had a freaks list guy last year in the top 20, Andre Yoshevas,
from
who
Princeton,
was
right?
high level track athlete at Princeton, really good receiver. And he's created a lot of buzz with the Bengals right now. He got drafted, and I suspect a year from now, Thor will be in somebody's camp, and people will be talking about him too.
That's so perfect. Like, it's a perfect Ivy League star defensive lineman name. If Harvard doesn't have like a Heisman campaign, or it wouldn't be the Heisman, but just a campaign of him with a hammer. He's built for this. And the hockey thing you mentioned, that was crazy. So he played in youth hockey. He played in a tournament where basically like half the 2019 NHL first round was playing in it. That's the kind of dude he was in hockey.
Yeah, Jack Hughes was one of those players, like so many guys. It was the Junior Bruins, and his team was the Junior Bruins. And, again, when you have guys who are like that, who are playing other sports and really good at it, and then their bodies keep growing, it's like, it doesn't shock me that it translates well and he blossoms into something else, when he just focuses on football.
Now, another guy on this list, I'm gonna go back up the list to number 2, because I think that's the one I want to conclude on, because he actually might be the best pure football player in college football this year. Marvin Harrison Jr. And you watch him play, and everything looks so easy for him. What did the Ohio State folks tell you about him in terms of just how he does all this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Brian Hartline, the receivers coach, former NFL receiver himself, had, a crazy run, whether it's Garrett Wilson or Olave or Jackson Smith and Jigba. This is the biggest one. This is the most explosive one. He's he's not just good at everything, he's great at everything, but he's 6'4", 208 pounds. When I talked to him a few weeks back, last year I had him number 2 on this list, and he was 23 miles per hour, which is already fast. He went from 23 flat to 23.3. He was like, I really, kept working on my acceleration and some of the detail stuff. Usually when guys are as big and lanky as he is, they're usually, a little coltish. And I hate to, no pun intended, because obviously his dad was a great player for the Colts. But in terms of just the shuttle times may not be that great in terms of the stop start. Well, his are. I mean, he's a 3.94 shuttle guy where anything under, 4.2 is flying. And to be that quick to go with all the other stuff he has, he would have been the first receiver taken in the draft if he could have come out this past year. I think he's going to, I don't know. The guy who won the Heisman, I think, is really special.
Yeah.
I'd have a hard time saying, though, like, Drake May is close to Caleb. There's nobody close to Marvin Harrison Jr. as a receiver.
And Caleb's probably first in the draft because he plays quarterback. But in terms of how special they are at their position, and Caleb's very special at his position, but you're right about Marvin. And what made I've gone back and looked because we assume the name's the same. You're like, oh, he's an NFL Hall of Fame receiver's kid. Of course he's good. But Marvin Harrison Sr. was such a different kind of player. He's 6 foot tall, 180 playing in the NFL. This guy, his son is completely different.
Yeah, I did a conversation with him that we did on The Athletic to kick off Freaks Week. And one of the things that he talked about, I said, how much film do you watch of him? Because here and there, but he just lined up on one side, and that way he did his deal. Whereas I'm in the slot, I'm all, they do a lot of different things with him now. He goes, coverage was way different then than it is now. He had he obviously has a ton of respect for what his dad did, but I think it's such a different game, and he's such a different skill size, in terms of being that big. He's rare, man. He's just really rare.
Well, this is why I love this week so much every year, because reading this gets me so excited to see all these guys play. Like I've been circling games, and now I gotta find some Harvard games to watch. Like I gotta watch Thor.
Yeah, same here. Look, I was waiting. I knew you were going to bring up Thor at one point, and I was like, I had a ton of conversations with him over time of this. He's one of these guys who I feel like the Freaks list is kind of made for. So I'm excited to watch this fall.
Yeah, Thor. Listen, we're already watching Charlotte for Biff Poggi, but we got our moguls guy who can walk on his hands. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. And Bruce, you are the best in the business. And this, I think, is my favorite thing you do.
Appreciate it, Andy. It is definitely the thing I feel like I will be most known for my career. And I'm okay with that, because, it's been a long time working on it. And a lot of coaches and strength coaches and people inside athletic departments have supported it well. And NFL scouts, people and those kind of folks have been very cooperative too. So it's something I love working on, and it's exactly what you said. It's a great way to lean into the start of college football, because you're talking about the players, and that's what gets me most excited.
So next year for Freaks Week, I want you doing Turkish get-ups in the Michigan weight room to kick it out. So you also work for Fox, and they have that great relationship with the Big Ten. So that's what you should do. Fox pregame show week 1 is you doing Turkish get-ups in the Michigan weight room.
Andy, I don't think I could do a Turkish get-up at this age with more than like a 2-liter bottle of Coke.
I actually had to do them for a workout not long ago. Just to put this, I am not a small person. I weigh like 230 right now, and so Kris Jenkins and his 170-pound dumbbell Turkish get-up, like I was doing them with 45.
Okay, that's
so that should tell you.
When you put yourself in the Freaks part, so I at Big 12 Media Days, I saw the Godfather, Dante Corleone of Cincinnati. Size 18 shoes, size 11 hands, which are obviously really big. And I don't have small hands. Like I have a size 13 shoe. My hands are pretty big. And I put my hand up against his and took a picture of it. And I was surprised, because we were going to run it. I thought we were going to use it, but we didn't. But Just when you just some of these things for scale, again, I just think yeah, 40 pounds is for an average human being is actually a lot to do a Turkish get up, for somebody who's, over 40 years
I'm
old.
not sure I could lift a 170-pound dumbbell off the rack.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I could either at this point. Like, I'd like to think I could, but I'd be so worried about like pulling like something in my neck or something in my shoulder, and then all of a sudden, like a day later, my back is bad because of it.
That's where you realize, some of these really, really great college football players are a completely different species. So I played with a guy named Zach Pillar who ended up playing in the NFL for a long time.
Yeah,
And
Florida State guy.
so he would be on the incline bench doing dumbbells, and the heaviest dumbbells we had in the weight room were 150 pounds. And he would just be pumping out reps, talking like you and I are, just having a conversation. And I just remember trying to pick one of those up afterwards and thinking, if I could ever do one rep of this on an incline, I'll be happy. But it's nothing to him, just nothing. So.
Yeah, I used to go heavy for me in the weight room, and I was a little under 200 pounds. But there were times where I could not even I was more concerned about, can I control the weight? Not can I actually do it when I'm moving it. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Shh. Anyway, so enough about my weight exploits. So.
Okay. Well, Bruce Feldman, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Andy. I enjoyed it, and I definitely appreciate the love for the Freaks List.
It's my favorite, and we will talk again many, many times before the next one, but I will probably be texting you with suggestions.
Awesome. Thank you.